Good morning to all of you. Professor Chair, my able Dean of Business School, heads of department, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. I think we all know the rationale for this program. And so I'm not going to repeat myself or repeat what we all already know. And so time is already spent. And so I think that we should proceed and get our resource persons to take us through the items that have been listed in this program. So we have with us here, I think all our resource persons are around and ready. We have Professor Osman Ibrahim already here, seated, loaded for action. Professor Isaac Weafe is also around. He's just having some Zoom meeting out there. Professor Abagade will be joining us shortly, and then Professor Abdul Rahman will be joining us shortly. So please, let us begin. Thank you. All right, thank you very much, Prof. Abazabin. And thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to have this conversation with colleagues. In fact, I must be honest, this kind of workshop is something we have been planning at the business school. And unfortunately, it's surprising to see that many of our colleagues from the business school are not even here. And that seems to lend a little bit of credence to the reason why many of us, if we don't take these things very serious, we may perish. Either you publish or you perish. All right, that's on United. My topic for today is publishing credible index journals. Largely, what I'm going to be doing today is to have a conversation with you regarding some of my personal experiences and other evidence-based practices that can help us to navigate the publishing process. Now, interestingly, many of us may know that the publishing journey is not an easy one. It's a tough one. It's a very difficult one, but it is doable. It is doable if you understand the strategies, and that is the focus of our discussion today. The focus of our conversation today. So to start off, I have a number of stories that I want to share with you. And the first story I want to share with you is what I refer to as the 3 emails. I refer to this short story as the 3 emails. Now, imagine we are all researchers. Imagine you submitted a paper 6-7 months ago. And then after 6-7 months, you receive an email saying that, unfortunately, your paper has been rejected. Then you look at the paper carefully. There's nothing wrong with it. And many of us go through this process. Assuming this paper is a product of your PhD. There is no way you can go and change the data, work on the data, because you are done with the PhD. So what do you do with this piece of research? The first best alternative is for you to look for an alternate journal, and submit it. So you submit again. Then 3 months down the line, you get an email saying that your paper has been accepted with major revisions. So you are thinking, what did I do wrong in my beginning? You work on it again, and then you submit it. And perhaps this morning, you receive an email indicating that they are pleased to accept your paper. These 3 categories of emails are what we receive very often as academics. But the interesting thing about these emails is the fact that, so this is a picture of the first guy sending the paper out, getting so dejected with a rejection notice. Then another email, major revisions, and then hooray, another email saying that the paper has been accepted. In fact, if you look at all the 3 scenarios, what changed wasn't actually the research, because the research was done and dusted. What actually made the progress was the strategy adopted by the researcher. Maybe the researcher considered sending it to another journal. Maybe the researcher looked at maybe the grammar, looked at some other things and resubmitted it, and perhaps because of that. So strategy is very important in the publication process. The second story I want to share with you is a story of 2 researchers with the same talent, the same work ethic. But the first researcher keeps getting his papers accepted in credible index journals, whilst the other one, anytime he sends a paper, the paper gets rejected. So the tendency of the second researcher is to look for a shortcut. Maybe look for a predatory journal and pay and also get published. Remember, I indicated that these 2 gentlemen, these 2 researchers are having the same talent and they have the same work ethic. With regards to this, the difference also is not the issue of talent or the effort you put into the publication process, but the difference is that perhaps the one who gets published in index journals, credible index journals, understands the publication process. And that may be the reason why. Understanding the publication process is a critical strategy every researcher must have. Now, this is the sobering reality that we must all accept. Sobering reality we must all accept is the fact that in very top-tier journals, research indicates that about 85% to 95% of papers submitted in top-tier journals get rejected. What does it mean for me and you? What it means is that your paper definitely, if you are in this room, your paper would one day be rejected. Your paper would definitely be rejected. But the issue is not about the rejection. The issue is about what you are going to do if your paper is rejected. And that is why we are embarking on this process, this conversation this morning. Now, to understand the publication process very well, you need to understand, and first of all, we all accept the fact that we are part of the 85% club, which means that the tendency of our papers getting rejected is there. It's very high. And I bet you I don't think there's somebody here whose paper has never been rejected. If your paper has never been rejected, then most probably you are not publishing in index or credible journals. So what is the difference? To be able to understand what a credible index journal is and what a predatory journal is, it is important that we understand the indexing process. When we say a journal's index, what do we mean? To understand that, we must first of all understand the fact that journal indexing basically deals with a curated database, a quality database that first of all evaluates journals and selects the journals for inclusion in credible databases or directories. What are usually engaged when we talk about indexing? Some indexing databases or indexing repositories may index in full text, or they may index the metadata of a particular journal or a particular paper. So quite a number of issues when we are talking about indexing. Indexing basically involves a bibliographic or citation index, and it's essentially a list of journals. And this list of journals, the articles contained in them go through a rigorous vetting process by a journal before the journal would list either the full text of the paper or before the indexing database would list the full content of a paper or the metadata of the paper. Now there's a caveat here. So does it mean that with all indexing types of indexing databases we have, they must go through the process of vetting? There's a caveat. Now, before I explain why most journal indexing databases will go through a vetting process, the caveat is that we have one common indexing database that many of us are aware of, Google Scholar. And I want to list that as there are many examples of indexing databases you may be aware of. Now, the first one is Web of Science. So if you are going to publish in a journal, you may want to find out, is this particular journal listed here? Basically, what it will mean is that this paper would have gone, if it is listed in Web of Science, it means that the paper would have gone through a rigorous process of getting evaluated and included in their database. Now, Web of Science is maintained by this particular company. Then we also have Scopus, also widely known indexing database maintained by Elsevier. Web of Science they are very well known for the journal impact factor, whilst Scopus is well known for the site score. Another one, if you are in the biomedical sciences, we have PubMed and Medline, primarily for biomedical and life sciences. If you are also interested in publishing in an open access journal, your focus may be to find out if the journal you are publishing in is listed as part of what? As part of DOAJ. Now, back to the caveat I wanted to issue. Google Scholar. All of these databases, before a journal is listed in them, it will have gone through a rigorous process of what? Evaluation before it can be included. But there's a difference with Google Scholar. So with 1, 2, 3, 4, what it basically means is that they don't automatically index a journal. Papers don't automatically get indexed in these journals because they have to go through that rigorous process. But for Google Scholar, it is different. It is different because Google Scholar relies largely on web crawlers to crawl the internet to find out articles, academic papers, and then they list it as part of their search engine. So I have come across academics who say that, oh, this paper I am publishing is in so and so journal. And I've argued that looking at the nature of the journal, it cannot be found in the most popular indexing databases. But this gentleman, this professor would argue that, oh, but it is in Google Scholar. The fact that it is listed in Google Scholar doesn't mean that the journal is what? Is credible or indexed, because they rely largely on web crawlers. The web crawlers will crawl the internet and look for any academic paper, whether it is predatory, whether it is credible, a top-tier journal, low-class journal, it will be part of this. So most often than not, you would find predatory publishers listing Google Scholar for gullible researchers to see it and think that, oh, as long as my paper is going to be listed as part of Google Scholar, then it means that the paper will be credible. This is a big no that we have to take note of. Why is indexing important? Why is indexing important? I want us to look at it in 4 categories. In the first category, researchers. It is important for discoverability. It will make it easy for your papers to be found. The moment your paper is listed in Web of Science, at least people would acclaim the fact that, oh, your paper is credible. If it is listed in Scopus, we would also say that your paper is credible. The second one is also for artists, visibility is very important for us as academics. And I know quite a number of my colleagues here who do something very interesting. I think almost all UTAG members majority of UTAG members do this. They hear of an academic, the first thing they do is to go to Google Scholar. But the most experienced academics will not necessarily go to Google Scholar because they know that even if they go to Google Scholar and find your papers, some of your papers that are listed in Google Scholar may not be credible because they may not have been indexed in either Scopus, PubMed, or Web of Science. So the first thing they do would be to look for the credible indexing database. I'm not saying Google Scholar is not credible, but Google Scholar doesn't go through that rigorous indexing process. It automatically indexes whatever it finds on online. So it is very important for our visibility. Publishing in an index journal will increase the chance that a global audience will find. So you are bidding for, maybe you submitted a proposal for a grant, and the selection committee wants to just find out the extent of your research in that particular area that's related to the grant. So they go online to find out. Visibility and accessibility, very important. The next one is for the journals, credibility. Inclusion in recognized prestigious index journals is widely considered a mark of quality and scientific rigor. So if I am a professor and none of my papers can be found in Scopus, or none of my papers can be found in Web of Science, I'm in the biomedical sciences, none of my papers can be found in PubMed or whatever, but almost all my papers, we check, they are in Google Scholar. This will be a very troubling scenario for a professor, because these journal databases I have indicated are the most widely known credible sources. And so for you not to be listed as part of them, your research would be called into question. The last one, validation. Many academic institutions and funding authorities will go online to find out what you have done. You are claiming to be an expert in a particular area, and you want a grant to be advanced to you. They will find out what have you done in that area, and they would use the indexing database as a criteria to cross-check this. Okay, now how do we identify the credible journals? How do we identify the credible journals? It is easy to identify credible journals. It is also very easy to identify day-3 journals. I think many of us here would have, in one time or the other, received an email, unsolicited email, promising that if you submit, promising that in most instances, they address you as a professor when you are not a professor. If you are a professor, they would, to make you feel big, they will address you as Professor. I think this morning I got an email, Professor Doctor, so and so. They want me to chair a particular conference. When I just looked at it, I said, oh, day-3 conference. Because there are a lot of metrics you can use to check that. And one of these you can use to identify credible journals from predatory journals. Credible journals will not solicit for emails, and they will not promise you that if you submit your paper in 1 month, the paper would be published. Then no clear peer review process. So we have sent you this email. Your first point of call may be to go straight to their website to check. And when you go there to check, they indicate that, oh, within 1 and 2 weeks, 1 to 2 weeks, your paper will be reviewed. And maybe you go to their journal, the papers they have published before, and you realize that even the papers they have published, there are serious grammatical errors even in the abstract, sometimes even in the title. No clear peer review process. It's one indicator. Another indicator is excessive article processing charges, ABDCs. They say pay $200 and your paper will be published in 24 hours. Many times I've come across colleagues who are hard pressed for papers because maybe either age is catching up, maybe the next position is around the corner and they want to be considered for it. So and the papers are 5. Meanwhile, 6 papers are needed. So this gentleman just needs 1 paper in 24 hours. What should I do? So he's looking for an avenue to pay. And when you go to this website, they will charge you exorbitantly and the paper would be published. The fact that the paper can be published within a very short time tells you that the peer review process is what? The peer review process is not credible. Then editorial board members with questionable credentials. You get this email, then you go to the journal website, look at the editorial board, and you can't find credible members on that board. So mostly what I do, I'll just click maybe the EIC, the editor-in-chief, and Google the name. And then you'll find that this guy is like, he's not even available anywhere. You won't find the person anywhere. Most often than not, editorial board members who are credible. We want to check them. They may be affiliated to a research think tank, they may be affiliated to a university. You should find this evidence to back the fact that they are credible. If you don't find it, you will have to run away. Then the next thing you do, and very importantly linked to what we looked at just before, journals not listed in major databases. So you go and check the journal in the Scopus. It's not there. PubMed is not there. Web of Science is not there. DOAJ is an open access journal. It's not there. Google Scholar is right there. If you depend on only Google Scholar, you would be led. Then the last one, promises of guarantee acceptance. Even before you send the paper, this email guarantee the fact that when you submit your paper will be accepted. Now, one thing of late, I and many others have used to identify credible journals is this organization called Ata Licensing and Collection Society. They pay lecturers some secondary royalties for people's access to their work in the UK. Now, if your paper is not in a credible journal, and you go to apply for this money, within a week or two, they will delete it from their database. It means that the paper is not qualified to be paid. But that is not a one-size-fits-all approach, because this particular organization only deals with publishers in the UK. So you cannot use that to judge whether the journal is credible, the paper is published in a credible journal or not. But it's very important. Promises of guaranteed acceptance is something we all have to look out for. So legitimate journals never guarantee acceptance or promise unrealistic turnaround times. Maybe behind the scenes, you may know an editor, and the editor, the publishing process also involves some level of politics. If you have attended very, very top conferences, you may have come across editors and early career researchers discussing the fact that, you can submit your paper, you can send it to me and I'll have a look. Behind the scenes, these things happen, but they don't promise the fact that the moment you send it, the paper would be accepted. Now, if all of this are ticked, and you still go ahead to submit your paper to a journal, the likelihood that your paper will be published in a predatory journal is 100%. And I'll just give you an example of a typical paper published in a predatory journal. This is a paper that was published in a predatory journal. And these guys decided that they wanted to just test the peer review process. So they came out with a title for the paper. And the title of the paper is "Get Me Off Your Fucking Mailing List." And they repeated it throughout the paper. So if you get the full paper, the abstract is "Get me off your fucking mailing list." Get me off, sorry to use that word. Throughout, if you get to the background, you get to the methodology and analysis, everything, this is what is there. When it was submitted to the journal, within a day or two, it was published. Yeah, the paper is online. It was published. If you go to this website, you'll find the paper. This is a clear indication of what will happen to you as an early career researcher if you don't understand the publishing process and you submit your papers anyhow. Still on identifying credible journals. So it is important that we consider editorial excellence. Clear editorial board is the way to go. Look at who and who are on the editorial board. Look at the timelines of publication. Usually they will indicate it. You can easily find it. You go to the journal's website, they may indicate 1 to 2 weeks, run away, 1 to 2 months, run away, because we will see very soon. The process is long and cumbersome to take only 2 weeks or 2 weeks. Then you also have to look at the impact factors, the site scores, and other metrics on the journal's website, and also look at the review process. How have they described the review process on their website? Is it clearly described that the peer review process? Look, I have come across a journal where the peer review process, they even have a template for the review. And it's a checklist. So when they send a paper to you, they send you the checklist. Background, introduction. So you will just be ticking yes, no, and then you assign percentage and you send it back. And then most of these journals too, you submit a paper to them and they say, oh, your paper has been accepted as is. What a genius. Then the database inclusion. Also, I've mentioned this already. If the journal is listed in a reputable indexing database, then you are good to go. Then also professional affiliations. Many of us belong to professional associations. Information systems, we have the association or information systems, and they have their journals which are associated to that particular association. You can publish in that as well. Now, how do you identify a credible journal? The easiest way to identify a credible journal is to use the criteria we have just outlined. But you can also look at some of these tools. thinkchecksubmit.org is a practice-based website that can guide you. When you go there, they have 3 checklists for you to be able to check to find out the credibility of the journal. Okay? Apart from that, you can use JOACH. If it's an open access journal, just go and check whether the journal is listed as part of the directory of open access journals. Then, most importantly, Jeffrey Bills, the famous librarian, has done so much when it comes to D3, the list of D3 journals, and it's online. You can go online if you are suspicious of a journal, go to Bill's list of predatory journals and just check. Now, this is on a side. I have had arguments with colleagues regarding what journal should be considered as predatory. Anytime I am in an argument with a colleague, I'll just quail back, because the issue of predatory journals is for us as academics, it's not something we should be arguing about. And so for a professor to be arguing that a predatory journal is not a predatory journal, when all the indicators are showing that this is a predatory journal, then it says a lot about this kind of academic. Another option is just go to Scopus and put the journal's name there if it is not listed there. So you may not find it in Scopus, but it may be in Web of Science. You may not find it here, but it may also be in other journals. It does not necessarily mean that it is predatory. But this is a very good guide for predatory journals. Also, if you look, there are also master journal lists that you can use. So, for instance, if you are in the biomedical sciences, you are in the natural sciences, you are in business school, we have lists of journals that we rely on. So, for instance, in the business school, we have 2 main classes or categorizations of journals that we rely on. And the first one is ABS, Association of Business Schools List of Journals. Then we also have the Australian Business Deans Council list. Now, what these 2 lists basically do is that they find out all related business journals, either from Scopus, Web of Science, JOACH, and they put it together and publish it. So you can also have a list in your field, which not necessarily in Scopus, but in that categorization. You can rely on that as well. What it means is that though it may not be indexed in Scopus, but in your field, it is ranked, and with time it may be indexed in Scopus. Now, other tools we can use for journal selection are these. You can use journal finder tools. If you go to Elsevier's website, or you just Google for a journal finder on Elsevier's website, you can put in the title of your paper, you can put in the abstract, the keywords, and then you just click search, and it will suggest a number of journals for you to consider. Similarly, Springer's journal suggester is there, performs the same function. Then we have IEEE's publication recommender, which also performs the same function. Now, one important thing I want us to look at is, even before you submit, you get to this stage of looking for the journal to submit. What should you do? So, pre-submission strategy. Even before you start to write, read extensively in your target journal. Just come through to understand the publication patterns, the preferred methodologies, and the current trends. I know a number of journals in my field. If I send any quantitative paper there, the paper may stay there for 3, 4, 5 months, and in the end, it is going to be rejected because the methodologies they accept are not quantitative. This is very important in our journal. It's very important as part of our pre-submission strategy. Scope alignment. If you submit a paper to a journal and it is out of scope, you may just experience a text rejection. Don't go anywhere. And they will write back to you and tell you that your paper is out of scope, which means that the journal is not considering this particular area. Then we have guidelines for review. You also have to pay critical attention to the other instructions before you even submit. Look at the other instructions thoroughly, including the formatting requirements, the word limits, and submission procedures. Recently, I'm struggling with some of my students to submit their papers to journals because the papers are excessively long, 14,000. And journals, most of the journals they want to submit to require that the word limit be 8,000, 9,000, maximum maybe 10,000. Now the last one, strategic assessment. Balance the journals proceed with realistic acceptance rates. Also, from my personal experience, one of my students came to me last week and said, "Oh, Prof, I'm submitting my paper from my Journal of Association for Information System. This is a top journal. Prof, we are faced laughing. I just blurted out. I said, what are you doing? Because if you submit this paper to this top tier journal, even editorial review, it may take 1 year and they won't look at it because there's a long queue. So you have to balance, look at the nature of the journal and look at the acceptance rate also. Most credible journals will indicate the acceptance rate. For predatory journals, they will tell you acceptance rate is what? It's 100%. So be careful. All right? So the key thing is for us to ask ourselves is, would your research genuinely interest these journal readers and contribute meaningfully to ongoing scholarly conversations? If no, if you send it to that journal, in the end, it may be rejected. Now, the conversation today is not actually about how to craft a strong manuscript, but having a strong manuscript is a critical thing you need to do before you submit. So for a typical paper, I'll just quickly go through this. For a typical paper, in your introduction, you should strongly establish the gap and the significance of your research. The methodology section should be very transparent and rigorous. Most often than not, we say it should be what? Scientific. So that if someone was to take your paper and look at it, maybe they can, in a way, replicate what you have done. But if we have a lot of ambiguity in terms of your methodology, the likelihood that your paper will be rejected. Your findings should be properly structured so that your argument flow from one to the other. Then your contribution, interpretation and contribution, very, very critical. For us in the information systems field, especially if you are looking at an interpretive study, it is clearly documented what your contribution should be. You should be providing clear insights. You should be extending the theory or applying the theory in a novel way or offering practical implications of your study. If you are not doing this and you submit it to journals like that, they may reject it. The last one, conclusion. Your summary and future directions should also be very, very clear. Now, most often than not, one easy thing reviewers do, and these days it's so easy to do, and I know Prof. Wafi may be touching on that. To review a paper, you can just upload the paper and try to find out are all the in-text citations listed at the end. And the AI will tell you, if you are not fond of using reference managers, the possibility is that you may experience the problem of omitting some in-text citations at the end of your paper. So take that also one of the best practices. And one of the reasons why your paper may be rejected may be a mismatch in the in-text citations and the reference list at the bottom. Some journals will require that you write a cover letter when you are submitting. How do you write your cover letter? Your cover letter should be properly written. A brief introduction summarizing your research and the purpose. It shouldn't be a very long letter. Significance and novelty of your findings so that it will interest the journal to even have a look at it before it goes through the process. Why you are choosing the journal? Why you think the journal is happening? For you to be able to do this very well, you should have gone to the journal's website to critically look at the scope of the journal. What kind of issues are they currently discussing and accepting? And then essential confirmations, the originality of your research, and the fact that the journal has not been submitted elsewhere. What I have noticed of late among us researchers is that because of the issue of timelines and chasing the next promotion, and so I want the paper to be published quickly. And ethically, we may submit to multiple journals. So yeah, people do that. I know quite a number of people. Well, I have done that, and it's unethical. I have done that in the past for one reason or the other. And basically, what they do is they will look at the journal in Emerald, send the paper there, and then move away from Emerald to maybe Science Direct or maybe Wiley and send it there. But one interesting observation that has come to my attention is that if you are using, if the journal is either in Emerald or it's in the Wiley, and they are using the same software, the likelihood that it would detect multiple submissions is there. Because if you are an editor, sometimes when papers are submitted, on the dashboard, you can see if multiple submissions, if they are using editorial manager or manuscript central, the possibility of the EIC seeing where the other papers are submitted, the paper is submitted because the software may be able to crawl the web to find out if other submissions have been done using the same software. So it is important that you write a very professional, confident, but not arrogant cover letter. Now, if a journal promises that your paper will be published in 1 month, and you submit it there, the truth is that it means that you don't understand the publication process. Because looking at this, even the initial screen, the admin guys will not do for weeks. They may not even have a look. They may not even take a look at it. Sometimes just look at the automatic ID that is assigned to your manuscript. Your manuscript, maybe by the end of January, the beginning of the year, end of January or early February, you submit a paper to a journal. That's just the beginning. And they start numbering the journals from the beginning of the year. And you realize that it's just January, but my paper is numbered 300. It's numbered 300. The administrators take a long time to go through it, to screen it before it goes to the next one. So it may take up to 2 weeks or even more. Before it even moves from the desk to the editor for assignment, another 2 or 4 weeks for the editor to go for reviewers. Reviewers some may take weeks, sometimes months, and they will come back and say that they will not be able to review. And the editor will have to look for alternative reviewers. Then the review period, after they have all accepted, the review period will now start. 4 to 8 weeks, maybe less. Then when it comes, it's sitting on the editor's desk, the EIC's desk, to make a decision. Sometimes you check online and it says awaiting editor's decision. 1 month. Because maybe the editor is on a holiday. Or maybe the editor is dealing with a lot of manuscripts. So it may also take some time. And then you get that final email, one of the 3 emails. Your paper has been accepted with what? Major revisions. It's not minor, major revisions. But if you had submitted to a predatory journal, they will say you are a genius and your paper is accepted as it is. In its current form, in fact, that is the effective problem. Yeah, sometimes even after addressing the reviewers' comments, when you submit it, they may send it out again for another round of reviews. Sometimes after that 3rd round of reviews, considering the nature of the journal. So it may take a lot of time, from 3 to 9 months, and sometimes over 1 year. Yesterday, we got our paper rejected after 1 year. After 1 year of waiting, the paper was rejected. Yeah. And they indicated that, interestingly, they indicated that they didn't find a literature review section. Well, there was a literature review section, but we didn't name it literature review. I don't know what happened. Okay. Now, Types of editorial decisions related to the three emails we looked at. This is rare. Accept in its current form. Very rare. Accept minor revisions. It's positive signal, and the comments they have given you are addressable. Major. Accept major. Substantial concerns have been identified, but they are inviting you to what? To resubmit. Sometimes they will just reject the paper, but they'll give you extensive review. The editor-in-chief will give you an extensive review and give you the opportunity to resubmit to that journal. It means that the journal is almost getting a home. The scope fits very well with the journal. They like the paper, but they have critical issues they think you need to address. In a situation like this, it is not necessary for you to consider sending it to another journal. You can revise and submit. But if you are hard pressed for time, as I indicated, you may look for another one for it. Then the last one, rejects. The paper is not suitable for this journal, or there are fundamental flaws with it. Now, understanding rejection is very important as academics. And I have categorized the common reasons for journal rejections into four, and I'll call it the four pillars of failure. The four pillars of failure. The first pillar is alignment failure. If there's a scope mismatch, the paper will be rejected. If there is a methodological flaw, it will be rejected. It means there's no rigor. The paper is not scientific enough. Then contribution failure, insufficient knowledge. The contribution you say you are adding to the body of knowledge is so scanty, and even what you say you are contributing, you are overclaiming your results. It will also be rejected. And then the last one, communication failure, poor presentation, incomplete literature, poor grammar, incoherence, all will fall under communication failure. But remember, even the top most academics also face rejections. Yeah, they also face rejection. Interestingly, if you are submitting a paper and you are proposing a paradigm shift in your area, the likelihood will be that your paper will be rejected. Why? Because people, exactly, they will be asking, this is what we have been doing. The rule of thumb is ABC. What is this guy proposing? So you may have to submit, resubmit until your paper will find a home. Now, submitting journals and getting rejected, it can have an emotional toll on us as academics. My personal experience, somewhere around 2014, I submitted a paper to the journal, and I got, as part of the reviewer comments, I got a comment that the discussion around this particular issue, they have moved on. So yeah, it was part of my they said they have moved on from this discussion in the field. Yeah, so you can imagine how dejected I felt. That they have moved, the discussion has moved on. Yeah, and you would get this. So I just looked around. There's this link on X, Twitter, also on Facebook, called "Shit My Reviewers Say," and I just went through it just to share with you some of the things reviewers can say about what we submit. And look at the first one. The reviewer indicated that I am afraid this manuscript may contribute not so much towards the field's advancement as much as towards its eventual demise. It just basically telling you that you are killing the Then this one says, I have read this paper several times through, and I have nothing to say in its defense. There's no merit in the paper. You should have just said that. I cannot for the life of me figure out why this paper was written. I cannot for the life of me figure out why this paper was written. Then the next one, the authors have gained some attention in the community. Most of this is due to the wrong reasons. You are known for the wrong reasons. The authors seem to be reinventing the wheel and a flat tire to go along with it. if you receive an email like this about a paper from your journal, you are going to be so traumatized. So how do you deal with comments like this from reviewers? Because comments like this, at least once in your publication lifetime, get a review like this from a stubborn reviewer. And usually we call that stubborn reviewer. I don't know how that happened, but reviewer too seem to be stubborn with harsh comments. Yeah, so it may have an emotional impact. Rejections may have emotional impact on us. So the normal reaction would be you'll be disappointed and frustrated, and you will be doubting what you are capable of doing. And you will feel so angry. Anger towards the reviewers and anxiety about your career progression. Yes. At some point, I was telling a colleague that maybe if I just get to senior lecture, this tell me I'll stop it. Yes. You can be so demoralized from reviewer comments. But the healthy reactions you can take will be when you get those comments, just take a break. You can look at it. My supervisor used to say, oh, leave it for 1 week, and then we'll come back to you. Let's continue what we have been doing. We'll come back to the comments. But it's difficult to do that. Once in a while, you go and look at the comments and you are like, what is happening? Yeah, discuss with your supervisor, your mentors, and your colleagues. Yeah, rejections are part of the broader process. Okay. Now, reviewer comments. Analyzing reviewer comments. What should you do? The first thing you can do is read it without responding. Just go through them, scan through them. All the nonsense they have said, just go through it. Then try to process that emotionally first. And then you start categorizing the comments, either into major or minor ones, those that are technical, those that are presentation issues, scope issues, requests for additional work. You can categorize them. Now, it is also possible that some of the comments from maybe reviewer 1 and reviewer 2, they align. Multiple reviewers mentioning, say you should try and identify that as well, so that it will reduce your emotional stress. Then, also, it is not always true that the reviewers are right. It's not always true. So, look at this carefully. Assess the validity. Are the reviewer comments or their concerns legitimate? Have you come across this scenario? Anytime you see a reviewer recommended that you must cite ABDC, look at it carefully. That's the reviewer 2. That's the reviewer. Mostly, the reviewer wants to grow his or her citation, so you refer his work. But is that fair? We'll look at how to deal with unfair reviewer comments. And then after that, you can plan how you are going to address each of the comments by preparing your response to your response table. So in responding to it, you structure it very well. Summary of major changes, point-by-point responses to each comment, and indicating which paragraph and what you have done. Now, depending on the nature of the response. So, for instance, if it is accepted, we agree with this. Maybe some of the emails you may get. We agree and have made the following changes. Maybe you accept what the reviewer is saying. You may also disagree. We agree with one, but respectfully, we disagree with ABC. You do that in a very professional way. You can also disagree by saying we appreciate this comment, but maintain our position because A, B, C, and D. And then your tone should always be professional, respectful, and evidence-based. But depending on also the nature of the review, whether it's minor, major, your strategy may also be different. If it is a minor revision, you must address all points thoroughly and highlight the changes. Usually, the journal will recommend how you should highlight the changes. Either you highlight it in color or you just enable track changes, and then they will give you time to respond. If they give you time to respond and you feel you cannot respond within that time, you ask for more time, and don't introduce new. All of this has to take your time to be right. Now, when do you submit? When do you submit or submit your paper elsewhere. If it's a major revision, your approach may be elsewhere. If it's an outright rejection with no revision, just take it to another journal. Maybe it was a scope mismatch issue. Maybe the reviewers are demanding, they are making a reasonable demands. So you may decide that, oh, it's major revision. You can take it to another journal. You may identify a better journal to do that. Okay. Yeah, another strategies you can consider, use reviewer feedback to improve the manuscript. If it's a complete rejection, you can use the reviewer feedback to improve the manuscript and send it somewhere. I have seen some very early career researchers, they won't do this. The moment they receive a rejection with comments, they will leave the comments and send the paper again to another journal. It is important that we always consider the comments, see which ones you can address to improve your manuscript before sending it out. If it was a top tier journal, maybe 3-star, maybe this time when you are sending it out, you can consider sending it not to a predatory journal, but maybe 2-star. If it was an A journal, you can consider bringing it down, maybe a B or a C journal. Okay, but what you should never do is to submit. I don't encourage that you submit without incorporating some of the revisions or aiming too low out of desperation. And this is what has led many of us to publish in what? In predatory journals. Then you go through the comments and you realize, oh, the comments are very valuable. But if I'm going to address it, I may not be able to get that paper out before I can submit my thesis for graduation. So you decide that you would rather send it to a 1-star or a C and get through. I will not encourage that as well. Some reviews may be very unfair. How do you deal with it? A reviewer, just like in the other case, in the examples we saw, a reviewer venting his anger, personal attacks on you, or professional tone. Most often than not, we say this is blind peer review. But looking at the nature of the paper, the reviewers know where the paper may be coming from. I mean, the region it may be coming from. And they may say certain things which may not be palatable. The request outside of scope of the journal. The reviewers are asking you to do things which are not within the scope of the journal. It's not fair. I know some of you may have come across a scenario where you are thinking, did they read the paper at all? Yes. Clearly, when you go through the reviewer comments, all what they are asking you to do, you have done it. It's unfair. With this, there's a strategy you can use to get back to the editor. Or maybe there are contradictory demands. Reviewer 1 says this, reviewer 2 says this. Most often than not, we come across that. Reviewer 1 says A, reviewer 2 and 1 are saying contradictory things. Then bias towards specific methodology. In my field, this bias is there with some journals. If you are using structured equation model and you send an IS paper to some IS journal, they won't even look at it. They will reject it. They are biased towards that particular methodology. Or biasness towards a particular theory. Or they are demanding that you cite some particular papers. And I think I mentioned this earlier. Demanding citations of the reviewers' own work. Even the way the comment is phrased, you look at it carefully and you know that this is reviewer 2's work. Yeah, go and Google and then you will find that this guy wants to grow his citation. That is why he's doing that. But you don't see the relevance of the paper he's insisting that. So you don't see the relevance of your paper. Meanwhile, he insists that the paper be cited. In some journals, when the reviewer comments are received, they will send it, but they will send the paper when you have addressed the reviewer comments and the EIC looks at it. They may send it back to the reviewers to cross-check. If you are not lucky and they send it back and reviewer 2 says, cite my work, and you haven't cited, the possibility is that reviewer 2 may reject it. What do? You respond professionally in a rebuttal. I have a colleague shared some years ago, shared his experience about an unfair review Reviewer 1 accepted. No, reviewer 1 accepted, and as usual, reviewer 2 rejected. But this was a finance journal. The author was furious and said, what is happening? Going through the journal, I have realized that the methodology I have used, my paper is within scope. All what I have done, papers have been published in this journal using similar approach. So why are you rejecting mine? So he wrote a rebuttal to the editor and disagreed and indicated other papers published recently in the journal similar to his paper and asking why his paper was rejected. The editor-in-chief apologized and said he was going to have a second look at the paper. In the end, the paper was accepted. This was a top journal. So you should be confident about it, but you have to be very, very professional. And you can always contact the editor your concerns. It is difficult to be resilient in this publication process. This is so difficult, especially if you are doing it all alone. I always salute those who do it alone, like Vice Dean. If you have seen his papers, he goes alone. I don't know how he does. It's so difficult to go alone. You must be a genius. Yeah, I've seen a number of your papers, and it's soul after. You go soul after soul. How do you do it? Because the emotional can be so hard to deal with. Who do you discuss it with? Maybe when I'm done, he will share his experience with us in terms of how he has been able to do that. There are long-term strategies and also some short-term strategies. So how do you build a resilience? Attend workshops like this so that we can discuss as colleagues. If the senior academics can tell you how to navigate the process, the mistakes they have made, they share with you, and then you would avoid them. Then join writing groups. You can join writing groups in faculties, may be informal. 2 or 3 people just coming together and say, okay, let's have a plan so that this year, you being a senior academic that we coming up, can you mentor us so that at least 2 or 3 papers we can put it together? So join some writing groups and seek mentorship. We always say mentorship, but it is difficult to be asking someone to come for mentorship. That is why it is phrased seek mentorship. It's always difficult. If the person is not interested and you want to mentor the person, it will never work. That willingness from early career researchers must be there before they can be mentored. Present at conferences. If you have never presented at a conference, try it. Look at, even if it is not an international conference, local conferences, school level seminars, take charge. Maybe department level, they've never organized a seminar. You can tell the HOD, I have done ABDC. Can you organize a departmental seminar so that I will present to my colleagues and get some feedback? Even at school level, Faculty of Biosciences, they have done so wonderfully in this regard. And then network with editors. I'm not sure about networking with reviewers. Network with editors. If you go to conferences, you will find the editors. If you go to the top conference, you will find them. Talk to them, and then they may say, okay, what are you working on? Tell them what you are working on. They say, okay, if you're interested in send it to me by email, and I'll have a look before you submit. This insider dealing sometimes can support you hit some top journals. Now, the mindset we should have is we should view rejection as a redirection and not coil back completely, and learn from our experience and celebrate small wins. Your paper is rejected. Look, I always would say this. One of the papers from my PhD was rejected my second year. Drafted it, sent it. My co-supervisor got the email in the morning when I went to the office. He said, Ibrahim, are you okay? You sent a paper to IS Information Systems Journal, top journal. You sent the paper there, and I said, oh, he just laughed me off because he knew definitely that the paper would not be accepted. But I was an early career researcher, and I was just throwing the papers around. The paper, after almost a year, came back with 7 pages. Rejected, or not accepted. Rejected. But they suggested how I could contribute to the theory I was using. That was a big win for me, not a small. And it redirected my focus. So sometimes it may not necessarily be your supervisor who would give you that that direction. Review 2 may be helpful in this regard. So rejection is nothing more than a necessary step in the pursuit of success. All of us get our papers rejected at some point. How do you increase your success rate? Your data. You cannot, whatever kind of research you have, if you don't have strong, robust data, your data collection was poorly done, your paper, it will never find it. Then you target appropriately. Then follow precisely the instructions indicated in the journal's website and get feedback, pre-submission feedback. You can send the paper, you are targeting a particular journal. You can on the side send the paper to the editor. I'm interested in sending this paper to this journal. Whether they would mind or he would mind having a look at it. If there's time, you may be amazed at the feedback you would get. And it will save you that long period of waiting. Use professional editing to edit your manuscript before you send. These days, 10, 15 years ago, it used to be difficult. You had to pay for this service. These days, it's easy with AI. And Prof. We will talk about some of these things. AI will help you in streamlining it professionally. Grammarly will help you. Quillbot will help you. Look, let me not sway into this. Then also your submission. Time your submissions carefully. Time it carefully. Don't submit your papers during holiday periods. This may be a very minor issue, but look at it carefully. If I submit my paper on a Friday evening, Friday night, Friday, Saturday, Sunday already counts. I would rather submit it on. So checking this is very important. And I already mentioned the fact that it is important that we build relationships at conferences. You would be amazed at those you would meet at conferences. Editors of top journals. And if you look at the ways papers get published in top journals, I have met a colleague in one particular top journal in information system. None of my supervisors, I think nobody in Ghana even had a paper there. But one Ghanaian who was supervised by somebody, LSC, I met him at a conference and he was telling me, oh, my supervisor says I should submit a paper to MIS quarterly. And I'm like, really? Who's your supervisor? Then he said, oh, Crisanti Abdul. And I said, oh, okay. Then he said, oh, but they know each other. So on the side, he would tell me, my student is submitting a paper to your journal. So on the side, he would tell the student, she told my friend, when the paper is done, send it to the editor by email. So he sent it, the editor will look at it, give comments, then he'll polish it. You will not meet these people if you don't attend top conferences. Unfortunately, for us, it is difficult to attend conferences because we find it very difficult to sacrifice the book and research allowance. Yeah, for top conferences. But if you really want to hit the A-star, the 3-star, and whatnot, you should. We all have to do that. And then stay current, read recent publications in target journals, and be persistent. I think, yeah, I'm winding up. Ethical considerations. We may look at this. In maintaining integrity, plagiarism. These days, that is what is crippling our publishing careers. You submit a paper and the paper gets rejected because we have relied so much on AI to do that. So in an attempt to avoid the use of AI, you use a humanizer, and the humanizer messes up everything. Because of your trust in the humanizer, who decided not to go through again. And then when it goes, they check it and the paper gets rejected. Okay, then career strategies for early career researchers. It is always better for early career researchers to start with co-authored papers. I'm interested in knowing how Weisdin started, whether he has always been publishing as a sole author. But many of us started as what? With co-authored papers, so that you can learn from each other. And choose journals with reasonable acceptance rates. Choosing journals with reasonable acceptance rates doesn't mean that you should go and choose a predatory journal. Because for predatory journal, acceptance rate is 100%. For most journals, 50 to maybe 60%, and for top tier journals, 85 to 95%. So as an early career researcher, choose a journal with a reasonable acceptance rates. If you are a mid-career researcher, This is where you have to start thinking about balancing quantity, quality. Some have been lucky because of their mentorship they received as early career researchers, and they started with quality. Many of us started with quantity. But when you hit that peak, it is high time, or even before you hit that peak, you start thinking about hitting some top journals. Then if you are here, senior researcher, there is no need, unless you are mentoring someone, to start off an early career researcher. The best would be for most top senior-most researchers to target top-tier journals. Very difficult to penetrate, especially if you are a senior researcher and you don't attend conferences. Very difficult for you to penetrate. Success stories. Many of us know of Harry Potter, J.K. Rowling. I started off by saying that by welcoming you to the 85% club, was as part of the 85% club, it means that your paper will definitely be rejected one day. This Harry Potter, J.K. Rowling's book got rejected 12 times. But in the end, it was published and it became a bestseller. If you have a paper from your PhD, you have spent several years collecting data or conducting experiments, have submitted a paper to a journal, and maybe this paper is groundbreaking, the likelihood may be that initially it gets rejected. If it gets rejected, persists. In the end, the paper may find a home. Because most landmark papers, some landmark papers often face initial rejection. And I indicated earlier that if your paper is paradigm shifting research, it may also be too novel for it to be accepted. Maybe with time, it will also get accepted. So rejection, we should all see rejection as temporary, because good research eventually would find a home. Good research would find it. You can find quite a number of resources these days to be able to keep up with the publishing, to navigate very well the publishing process. I'm not sure of our library, the journal subscriptions we have, but rely largely on the indexing databases. Attend workshops and webinars, and maybe also rely on online resources like Coursera, edX, and what have you. If you go to Science Direct, Wiley, they also have other resources that you can rely on. Sometimes are just a little bit lazy, rely on some of these things to up our game. Some other books you can consider to support you are the books by Evans and Goba, How to Write a Better Thesis, the writing science, how to write papers that get cited, and then what have you. Now, the final takeaway is that publishing is a skill, and you don't just get up one day and be skillful researcher. You have to practice. And whilst you are practicing writing and submitting to journals, your papers will be rejected. But you should see every rejection as an opportunity to get something, to learn something valuable for your next submission. I entreat all of us to up our game, because, as has been said, Professor Alex Markowitz, he didn't listen. Because he didn't listen and he didn't publish, he perished. Thank you. So I think I would want to ask Prof to just share a little bit of his experience with us, because as I indicated, I am so envious of how he has done it. Yes. The full name, Professor Abdul Rahim. No, I want them to check your papers out. Mohammed. Yes, if you check his papers out, good journals, Soul Atta. Prof, how did you do it?
Thank you. And first of all, I would like to comment. There is this thing academics don't that's discussing our faith. We went to the site and we all experienced rejection, but you only see the success. That is when the paper is published. But when I submit a paper and it is rejected, you don't see it. So these are battles we fight quietly on the low without discussing it. And so it creates the impression that when your paper is rejected and you see that my paper is published,
you assume that I don't suffer rejection. I go, even last week I had a rejection. Now, the advantage I had was that when I started my first experience with reviewer comments came from my supervisor. So she asked me to do literature review. I did it and I submitted it to her. You know, these people, they are very open. He's white. She just destroyed the paper completely. And there is some level of ego involved in having your paper rejected. So it was time for supervision meeting. I went. She didn't see my face. I was very angry. Then another meeting for 2 weeks. I was not just myself. So then she said, what's the problem? I said, the comment she gave me, I didn't understand. Then she now pulled a paper that had been rejected that she submitted. And she gave it to me to go and read. And in the faculty, she was like an authority in that discipline. And when I read the comments that had been passed on the paper she had submitted, I developed this sense of shock absorbance against nasty comments. Then right from the start, I knew reviewer comments is just part of the game. And so for me, now I've gotten to the point that when a paper is rejected or when I receive a comment, I am not moved at all. But that's not how it started. You get emotional, you read the paper and you are feeling angry. Now I've gone beyond that. Now this issue of sole authorship, after PhD, when I published for my thesis, then unfortunately there were some people I tried to publish with. But then I realized that when we divide the work, I'll end up doing mine and theirs, and it's always like this. And you know, this issue of publication, when you are trying to force somebody to publish, it's like you want to be a headmaster. There are so many egos involved. So the people were really drawing me back. And I said, okay, so henceforth, this is what I'm going to do. And when I receive comments, normally revise in 1 month, 2 months, within 1 week, I've submitted it. I push myself to that level. And I realize that many people don't want to work like that. And so when you are a co-author, when I co-author a paper with you, there's some level of pressure. I realize that no, it's now becoming unfair. That's how I work. And I realize that you don't work that way. And that's my paper. Or that's a paper I want to be part of. So if you are going to drag me down, I might as well go alone. So that's how come about 90% of my papers are so authored. But then when I submitted for promotion for ASOPROF, one of the comments that was passed was that I should mentor other people. So now I've pulled the brakes on sole authorship. And the people, so now, and it's also difficult as academics to go and tell your colleague that help me to publish. It's not easy. I couldn't do it when I was an assistant lecturer. I couldn't approach you to tell you, please, people can't do it. So now what I do is that those I'm on that level with, even outside academia. So I have this idea, let's work together. Then now they join, and because I'm not in a hurry again, all the time in the world. Thank you.